Hey peeps, ErinZenWarrior here. So I was just talking with a friend of mine who's a splenic projector, and I said something. I was like, "That's actually really clever. I'm going to repeat that." And it was about emotionality, and something about emotionality in the world that we're in is it has been villainized. You know, we live in a world where actually being emotional, it doesn't serve big business. It doesn't serve corporate agenda. It doesn't serve getting the good hive mind to do its thing. Ideally, they drug you, fuck you up, leave you slightly robotic, and you sit at your desk and you punch things in all day and you do your job and you make the phone calls you need to and you sell the shit you need to and you go home and you sit in a box, work in a box, live in a box, come back to a box, and die in a box. And so the thing about villainizing emotionality, and it's a big topic I've seen a lot in a lot of guys' posts relating to men's health and men not being allowed to be emotional. But actually the truth is our whole society is against emotionality in general for people. And within the human design system, and this is not just a human design system post, within the human design system, 52% of people are said to be emotional. And we are evolving through the emotional center, and we see things like autism and prostate cancer and stuff are said to be like where we are seeing issues with the mutation that's happening. Hey, Anna. And so what I wanted to talk about was 52% of people have an emotional authority. That is an emotional decision-making system. But 48% of people have an undefined center there. So they amplify and appear more emotional than those of us that have that defined emotional center. Now, as someone with a defined emotional center, my wave is my decision-making authority. And with the 1949, I'm here to be the authority of how you throw your emotions around or don't. So misbehavior with emotions is my field. I am the boss. Hey, Anna as well. And so she says, hey, straight as soon as I hey as well. And so those of us that have emotional definition, we live in this wave. Those of us that don't have emotional definition, we amplify emotionality when we're around it. So we get hit by the wave. It's like being hit by a storm when you live in a teacup, right? Now, imagine if you lived like my friend and I did in an ashram situation where a lot of the time you're even sleeping in the same room as someone else. Guaranteed, somewhere along the line, you're going to get an emotional light up. You're now living as a teacup in a storm all the fucking time. And you're being told, don't be emotional. And you're being told you're the emotional one. And actually, it's the person who's slightly calmer next to you who's constantly going through a wave that you're amplifying. Imagine the world that we're living in. Now, as we go towards this incredible mutation that's occurring in 2027, after 2027, emotionality should calm down because the center has finished doing its, has transitioned through its mutation. It's not finished because there's a lot that still needs to happen as we move. But all the pulling apart of the channels, etc., has essentially occurred in the background frequency. However, as we go towards it, emotionality is whipping up. So you are seeing people like today in Little Bird, apparently a guy lifted up his table and dropped it back down. This is like the organic vegan cafe where everyone comes in and it's all smiles and light and yogis and, you know, people like me who do different healing modalities and stuff like that. A guy lifted his table up and dropped it back down after he was told, I'm so sorry about your smoothie. It's going to take another 4 minutes. And he was a regular. He was shocking. He actually it got much worse from there where he started abusing the staff and all sorts of things. And she was like, the waitress that I spoke to there was like, who's a friend of mine, was like, it was scary and it was very unexpected. And she said, why? And I said, do you think it's people just can't regulate anymore? And I said, yes, it is that people can't regulate anymore, but it's because emotionality is whipping up through this time. And look at the state of the world, right? Like, the world is not exactly feeling like a safe space to those people who live in 3D and believe in 3D. The reason I don't feel unsafe is because I don't believe any of this stuff. I'm like, this is a nice facade. This is a wonderful matrix. And I can go back to, I feel safe because I don't believe any of it. But most people believe it. They were born and raised in it. They live in a body that ties them back into it all the time. Sometimes my body wants to tie me back into it all the time. And so when your whole world is as discombobulated as ours is in this very moment, it's also going to stir emotions. So here's the thing about emotions. For the emotional, and I have my friend Anna in the room, Anna in the room. Why am I calling you Anna? I'm sorry. Anna in the room here. And she's an emotional field being as well. And for us, emotions are everything. They are, I got that correction right. I got a heart. They're everything. They're data. Emotions are data. And when you're a child, and I think particularly a projector child, and I'm going to say potentially with the 1949 because it is that policeman in the emotional circuitry, you learn very quickly to inquire into your emotions and go, why do I feel this way? Not, I feel angry. Why do I feel angry? What is it that I'm doing? What is it that I'm trying to get in this situation that I can't get and it's pissing me off, right? 1949 is about the tribe. Tribe's not behaving. I get very pissed off and it still happens to me. And I have to take that step back every now and again and go, what am I expecting from the tribe? Oh, I'm expecting them to work to my timeline. Well, that's never going to work, right? And that's one of the detriments of my chart. You should get enlightened on my fucking timeline. Well, that's just not compassionate, actually. And so I have to watch that in myself. But if emotions are data for the emotional, even though we say that those of you who have an undefined emotional center, check out who you're around because you're probably not feeling your own emotions. You're probably amplifying someone else's. There's this thing where we go, that means I don't have my own emotions. No, you do not have your own emotional wave. But you absolutely have your own emotions. You're still human. You still get to have an emotion to something. It makes you sound like a robot whenever human design people say that. So when you're around others, be aware of what's yours and what's not yours. If you're amplifying something, it's probably very big and a lot to take. Like my friend today, I think she's not emotional actually. So having that guy in inches from her face yelling at her really knocked her, you know. See you later, Anna. Have fun going out. So it really knocked her and she was still in it when I saw her. And that's like, yeah, she's now got to process that out of her white emotional center. That would have been a lot for her. You know, for my sensitivity, it might have been a lot, but because I have an emotional channel to process that out of, like I've got a way to move that energy through me, you know. And actually I spent a little bit of time talking to her, and because I have that channel, probably it helped her. Just because I have the electromagnetic, you know, and I took the time to talk to her. So that's also ways we can help each other. But all emotions are data, whether they're data about yourself or data about someone else. And emotions are not to be vilified. Emotions are to be embraced as a data wave. So when your emotions are very big and cataclysmic and you're around others, and if we are talking human design system, check out to see whether it's your sympathy, your empathy and your sensitivity that's actually taking on someone else's stuff. And what does that tell you about where that person's at? It can be a hugely empathetic quality to understand this about yourself. When you are an emotionally charged person, you live in the wave all the time. So your emotional data is everything. It's how you're making decisions. And the truth about emotionality is there's no truth in the now. There is never truth when you are emotional, full stop, no matter who you are. So when you're in the height of the wave and it's crashing around, whether it's someone else's or your own, make no decisions. That's the rule. That is always the rule, no matter how you are designed. Now, if you are undefined emotionally and on your own, then I will, I'll read that in a minute, Dean. If you are unemotional and you're on your own and you're in an emotion, one of two things might be happening. The first one is you spent all day around emotional people and you don't know how to detox that emotional stuff that is charged through your white system. And you may need to do some breath work, some calming, have a good shower, go jump in the ocean, go for a run. You need something to come back, cleanse your aura with smoke. Don't use sage. I wouldn't use sage when you're in that state. You need to be centered when you use sage. But even just some incense and just like clearing it over your head, aura soma, that kind of stuff, really great stuff. I think breath work is a nice way to go. I think a run or a good uphill nose breathing walk is a nice way to go. And then sit down when you're out of breath. Dance around your living room, express, yell, scream. I love a good yell into the wind, Just do it somewhere where they don't think that they don't call the police on you or whatever because you're dying, because they think you're dying or being attacked. Screaming at the ocean is always a good one. Yeah, exercise, exactly, Dean. Like something to shift the energy. Emotional energy is motion, energetically moving, right? So if you get moving, things are going to happen. So I realized I didn't put do not disturb on when I went into this. So all emotion is data. No truth in the now when you're in the height of the emotion. I'm just going to shut that down, whoever that is. No truth now when you're in the height of the emotion, but it is data. Why do I feel this way? And remember, the only thing in this world you can change is yourself. Everything else changes as you change because your world is reflecting you back. And something that's been really interesting for me recently is, like I said to you, I have this tribal wave in my emotions. So when my tribe misbehaves, I want to cut their fucking head off. Bottom line, that's how I feel. And there's been some really interesting misbehavior streams where people have just been out and out rude, to be honest, and unnecessarily unprovoked rude, where they don't think how they speak. And it's been getting under my wick quite a bit. And I suddenly, because it started happening a lot, I was like, what you focus on becomes your reality, right? But also I'm being invited to have a look. What can I learn here? Not my monkeys, not my fucking circus. That's the bottom line, right? I cannot make people behave, but I can notice when they're misbehaving and I can understand why. What am I seeing there? Well, a lot of the time when people are rude, it's because they're being hit emotionally. I'm an emotionally charged being. I inject emotionality into others as a projector. What our aura goes into the other. So not only does it absorb, but it also injects in. So where I'm at is going to create field interference with others. And of course, sometimes the way I am as a being, just who I am, is enough to really get up people's noses. And so they go for you, and that has nothing to do with me, actually. It is the reflection that they're receiving in a lot of cases. If I've stimulated it, that's a different thing. But in the situation where you're just sharing something and all of a sudden someone is abusing you and insulting you, it's like they are showing you something about themselves. And you can try, if you want to, as I have done, to try to get people to see reason. But sometimes they just don't want to. And we are very much in a time where people do not want to see reason. I'm just going to go back and read Dean's comments there. My ex-flatmate that just left recently was absolutely horrible. I'd turn horrible when communicating with her. Yeah, now, here's an interesting one, right? When you look at the electromagnetics between people, you can see how they disagree. And I had this discussion with my nephew the other day, and we were talking about objectivity and subjectivity, and he went away and looked up the definition of the words and went, oh, no, I see what you mean. I think I'm using that word wrong. And I love my nephew because he does his research. It's great. He educates himself, which is wonderful. And I was just saying there is no objectivity. My view is my view. There are things that channel in, right? And 4323 can channel in natural law. And I see Grace has just jumped in and she has that channel too. And that 4323 can bring in something that's very much beyond my subjective view. How I voice it is still going to be somewhat from the way I am, especially because my self-center is connected into my throat too. But the actual resonant frequency of natural law is still natural law. I just deliver it to certain people and I'm going to make it more resonant for some people than others because of who I am and how I am circuited. But outside of that, I have my own subjective viewpoint, just like everybody here does. And we all come in to bring our subjective viewpoint. And the people who get the closest to being objective are reflectors. And there are only like 1% of them in the world. And they still have their own gates hanging that condition that viewpoint to still be somewhat subjective, but they are known as the wisdom gatherers. So those of us with the 4323 who let it run, and it runs well, and we've learnt to translate it, we can bring in something that's objective. But if you really talk to us and we really know what we're doing with our design and we're in design, we will tell you when that's my opinion, versus versus that actually isn't anything to do with me. That just came in. That is just as it is. And I don't care if you agree with me or not, because it's nothing to do with me anyway. I don't care. But most people don't disagree with it. Most people can hear the resonance of it because it's natural law, right? And we're all plugged into natural law in our own way, whether we have that channel or not. There are different ways things just resonate with us through our designs. But keep that in mind. Emotions are data. No matter who you are, no matter how you're circuited, emotions are for inquiry. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? If I want to plug my chart into it, do I have a defined or an undefined emotional center? If I'm defined, it's probably mine, right? That doesn't mean I can't feel others' emotions, but it's easier to differentiate. If I'm undefined or open there, who am I looking at next to me, right? Is that person feeling that way? Because I'm feeling like I'm in a rocket of emotions right now, and I don't live in a wave. Whereas you may find your own emotions are not so big. They're not so uncontrollable, because you're not amplifying anyone's emotions. They're your own. So they're maybe even a little bit less in a way. I hope that's helpful. With regards to living with someone, yes, Dean. Also, I often have dated undefined emotional partners, not always. The ones where they've been defined emotionally, way easier relationship, to be honest, because I'm emotional and they're emotional. We understand that circuitry about each other and no one's amplifying each other's emotions. In the cases where I've dated people who have been undefined emotionally, they love it. They hook into it. It's very sexy to them. And within about 2 days, they start cracking up emotionally. They start being like, fuck, I can't control my emotions. And I'm like, because they're not yours. And you need to get the fuck away from me and just detox from this. Because the thing is that just because I'm in a good mood doesn't mean you can handle the wave, right? Little bumps in my wave, which I'm always in because the ocean is never still, are big waves to you. So be aware of that when you're dealing with the emotional center of someone else. You might not be fine because you've just been in it too long. I hope that was enlightening. I hope it was useful. It is a very emotional time as we head towards 2027, according to what I understand. And from what I can see, I don't think anybody can deny that. And for all of us, man, woman, etc., we have been schooled against our emotions. Instead of getting involved in your emotions, recognize them. I'm angry. I'm jealous. I'm sad. I'm all of these things. Why? What is that telling me? And if you want to be smart about it, honestly, check out your circuitry, see what your emotional center is, defined or undefined, see who you're around. Maybe that's going to help you out. And I do think people need to take responsibility. It's a radical self-responsibility to take your chart and go, I'm emotionally charged. I know that person isn't. They don't care anything about that, but I know that if I give them a break, they're going to be better off. And maybe they don't want to give me a break. Maybe they're a little bit codependent, but I can hold my boundaries and I can be like, we just need to detox from each other for a couple of hours. We'll come back later, I'm a projector. We don't know when to quit. It's the hardest thing in the world for undefined sacral centers to know when to give it a rest. And so on that note, I'm going. See you later. Have a nice day. Please comment. Please say whatever you want. And maybe it spurs on another discussion. Have a lovely emotional day.